I just want to say to many of you that have reached out to me via phone, email, and on social media to thank me for doing these virtual tours, that I love your feedback. I appreciate it. I love the fact that you're getting together with family, you're cooking meals that are appropriate for the destination we're going to. It warms my heart to know that this has become a typical every week occurrence in your house. And it really does make me feel good that it's bringing so many of you together. So thank you very much for sharing. I want to share a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Mary Walsh. I'm in the United States and specifically between Philadelphia and New York. I started leading physical tours with EF Tours as a Girl Scout leader, taking girls and their families to international destinations every summer. I've since expanded my physical travel program. Please note that even though my travel group started out as girl travel tours catering to girl trips, you'll also start to see the name Getaway Travel Tours being used to help alleviate any confusions for those to let you know that your eligibility to join our adult trips and our other trips. I do lead adult only tours with Go Ahead Tours, which is an EF division, and we also use several other organizations. We welcome females and males on our tours. I also offer multi-age group tours from teens through senior citizens. And as a certified travel agent, I can also book you on your dream trip, whether that be part of a group or on your own. Just reach out to me and we can get started thinking about your physical travel again, and we will all be on our way. In terms of the virtual tours, there's a couple reasons I started this series. I wanted to support the tour director community during this time of travel restrictions where they have not been able to work. And I really wanted to keep the excitement of travel alive for my travel group and extend that opportunity to those of you who have learned about us through your friends, your family, on social media, and other means. We've done more than 35 tours since COVID has struck. If you'd like to access any of the recordings, they're all available on my website, girltraveltours.com. There is a virtual tour tools pull-down menu that you can go view the recordings. They're also available on my Facebook page and my YouTube channel. We have several more planned for this coming year. The future virtual tours that are coming up. Next week, we have Mystery on the Danube River Cruise. We have the south of France, ancient Rome, Sydney, Australia, Wales and Cornwall, the Taj Mahal, Venice, Western Scotland, and Jerusalem. These have all been added to my website, so feel free to register for all of them. You do have to register individually for each one. And I'm in the midst of planning for the end of summer months right into the fall with destinations such as Argentina, Salzburg, and others. Drop a suggestion for a destination in the chat, and I'll do my best to see if we can get you there. As long as you're interested in viewing these virtual tour presentations, we'll continue to produce them. I know many of you have found my virtual tours on Facebook, and some of you are on Facebook right now viewing to the streamed event. I just want to put out another warning out there. Just be careful with the links. There are a lot of scammers out there that are trying to get you to click through to give you a credit card, to ask for a credit card. Please know that there are legitimate events such as mine where you do not have to give a credit card to enter. It's up to you whether you choose to tip via credit card or other means after you've viewed the presentation. Okay, before we get going, I want to share with you a few ways for you to interact with us during the presentation. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. Those are reserved for the tour director or for me after the presentation. If you want to chat something like, I've been there before, I love that place, that's reserved for the chat. Those are not going to be addressed, but it's a way for you to verbalize your excitement during the tour. And I always like to put up an interactive poll while we're starting out our tour. It gives us a sense of who has been to Portugal before. So let's ask the question, what's your connection to Portugal? I've been and love it. I have a trip booked. I plan to go in the future. I have no immediate interest, but that could change. if Manuel does a good job today. And I'm solely interested in experiencing it virtually. I know I am in category 2, which is I have a trip booked. In fact, I am taking a group of folks from Portugal, Spain, and Morocco. If you're interested in doing that tour in 2023, please reach out to me. It's a great tour. It's a long one. It's 20 days, but we're going to have a really great time. And Manuel is going to actually cover some of the places that we're going to visit in Portugal. So I'm going to share the results with you. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And if you can see, we have about 50% that plan to go in the future. We have about 30% that have been and loved it. That's a pretty good percentage, I think. So let's get started. I'm going to stop sharing. If the screen is still visible for you all, you can just hit the top left button, the circle to minimize it again. Okay, today's tour is to Portugal, as we said, where we will visit a place that is very high on my bucket list called Sintra, to find the underground well at Quinta de Regalier. I botch this pronunciation every time, and I know Manuel is probably laughing at me, but to find the underground well and know how magical and fascinating it is just an amazing stop on this tour. So you can all pick your favorites, but that's by far my favorite place. This virtual tour is scheduled for 90 minutes plus the Q&A. So I hope you're ready with a snack and a drink in hand. I can attest a group tour wouldn't be complete without a fantastic tour director. A tour director is like a personal concierge who stays with the group from start to finish, shares his world of knowledge, and manages all the travel plans. These tours are full of learning, fun, and culture. We will make sure that they are stressless and easy to navigate. And we are simulating that in our virtual tour. These are by far the most important people in our group, the tour directors. And if we're not traveling, the tour directors are not working. So I will allow, I will add to the chat and to the Q&A how you can tip the tour director. And when we're in the Q&A, you'll see on the slide how you can tip the tour director as well. I'm hoping that this virtual tour will not only keep our desire to travel alive, but will also allow Manuel to do what he does best, which is share his passion for travel with all of us. As I've said, we have Manuel back today. He has led us through many places virtually over the last year, including Madrid's Prado Museum, Barcelona, and Andalusia. Madrid, Manuel, if you'd like to come on and say hola to our guests and get ready to share your screen, I would be happy to turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Mara. Hello, everyone. Good evening from Madrid. I live in Spain. Probably some other parts of the world is good afternoon or good morning. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Mara, for having me again. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting the TV community. And we are passing these complicated times, but good news is I have already some tours programmed for after the summer. So things are starting to get on the trail again. Thank you so much. So you want me to start already?
Please.
Okay, thank you, sorry. My name is Manuel Alberca. As I told you, I live in Madrid. I've been working as a tour director for the last 15 years or so. Normally having groups, but also private small tours in the city. Okay.
Share your screen too, Manuel, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay, here we are. Now, I have everyone could see it. So today we are going to talk about Portugal. It's the broader country of Spain. I really like to be part of this Iberian Peninsula. Sometimes some people, they even have an idea of getting together the two countries. I wouldn't mind, okay? So we are going to start the tour about this country just very near to Spain. I'm sure you know where we are, in the southern part of the European Union, of Europe. in the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, and the small country of Andorra. Here you have like a beautiful satellite view of the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal is the greenest area, as you could see, to the Atlantic. And here you have like a map of the country, which is divided in several regions. To the right, you could see the flag of Portugal with the emerald sphere, because of the discoveries that they had in their history, and also the castles and the symbols of the nation. The country, as I told you, is divided in several regions, so we are going to go a little bit, we are going to have an overview over those regions first. But I want to share with you some facts of the country. The population in Portugal is about something more than 10 million inhabitants, so it's the 2% of the European Union. The area is also the 2% of the total European Union area. The unemployment rate in Portugal is about the 7%, pretty much the same like in Europe. The fertility rate 1.36, a little bit less than Europe, and the GDP is about 18,700 euros. Well, these dates probably are not up to date because of the crisis with the COVID, but pretty much. And the import of goods is 24 to 26, and export 26 to 74. They are doing very well with the renewable energy. So most of the years, up to the 30% of the energy is coming from, you know, the wind, the solar panels, any kind of clean energy. So those are some facts for you to have an idea over the country. First, we are going to start with the northern part of Portugal, known as Porto e Norte. So the main city, obviously, you have it here to the right, is Porto. But also, we have another important cities in that area, like the historic city of Braga, where they have, you know, the oldest cathedral. So it's the most important, or one of the most important religious city in the country. Also, Guimarães, which is in fact the origin of the country. It says, aquí nasceu Portugal, here, you know, Portugal was born, because literally is the starting point of the nation. And a particular area that I love to visit, and I suggest to go there when you are visiting Portugal and you have a chance, the Douro Valley. The Douro Valley by the River Douro is where they produce the port wine, a very famous wine produced in Portugal and exported to all over the world. They have beautiful quintas, as they call it, you know, the wineries. Nowadays, some of them are hotels, and it's very peaceful and a very nice visit to pay when you're visiting Portugal. From the northern part of Portugal, we'll get into the central Portugal. In here, we have several important cities, like the city of Coimbra, where they have the oldest university, not only in Portugal, one of the oldest in the world. Also, the beautiful town by the coast, Aveiro. Aveiro is considered somehow like the Venice of Portugal, because they have these, you know, canals with this kind of gondola similar to the Italians. It's a very nice, beautiful city. Also, another important spot in this area of central Portugal is the Batalha Monastery, one of the most significant Gothic buildings that they have in the country. Other ones could be the one of Alcazovas and many other buildings, but this one is the most important one in this Gothic style. And if you like to surf or water sport, you should stop in Nazaré by the Atlantic Ocean. Is the mecca for surfers. In particular, from October, they have these huge waves, and you know, sometimes, you know, it 80 or 90 meters high. It's a paradise for that sport. And going to Lisbon, in the way to Lisbon, if you're religious, probably you will know the sanctuary of the Virgin of Fatima, one of the most important shrines dedicated to the Virgin Mary in the world, receiving millions of visitors every year. From that central Portugal, we get into the region of Lisboa. Lisbon is the capital of the country, so we have here like an overview from the river Tagus, the main river in the Iberian Peninsula. But also another important stops of visit you could pay from Lisbon are Sintra, with this colorful castle of La Pena, or the beaches and holiday resorts of Cascais and Estoril. From there are the region of Alentejo, which is sometimes considered poor or not that famous region of Portugal, but it has beautiful towns, like the very important along the history city of Évora, but also Beja and Elvas, with this impressive fortification from the 1700s. And in the very south of the country, sorry, I forgot to tell you that in this area of Alentejo is where they produce cork. Portugal is the country in the world producing, the highest amount of cork, in particular for the stump toppers of the bottles of wine, but not only. In Portugal, you could buy any kind of souvenirs made with cork. Umbrellas, wallets, belts, anything, shoes. Don't forget that when you are visiting. And in the very south, we have the region of the Algarve, which is a holiday paradise with spectacular marinas, holiday resorts, beautiful beaches, like Portimao, or the beautiful city of Lagos. And also Portugal has two groups of islands in the middle of the Atlantic. One is the Azores, with the capital in Ponta Delgada, but also the beautiful island of São Jorge, and the islands of Madeira, where they produce also this particular wine. That is the capital, Funchal, and also this spectacular Ponta São Lourenço in one of the islands. So this was a kind of overview over the map of Portugal. And here we have some of the symbols, traditional symbols and of the city. For instance, tiles. Portugal is covered with tiles all over. We'll see in a moment in our webinar. Trams. Most of the important cities like Porto or Lisbon, they use, these electric trams. Wine, like the port wine, Madeira wine, the wine of Alentejo, all over the nation, they have wine regions. And fish, they love having fish. Codfish is their national preparation, their national dishes. They have 300, 400 ways of preparing codfish along the year. Music, the Fado music, this kind of mellow blues, kind of sad music is very, very popular in Portugal. Also some pastries like the pastéis de Belém that we'll see later. Sardines also is something that they love to have. And soccer, football, as we say in Europe, they love that sport in Portugal. One of the symbols I want to remark for you, because you are going to find it all over the nation, is this kind of rooster, colorful rooster of Barcelos. It has a legend attached from the medieval ages. Apparently, in a town called Barcelos in the north of the country, a crime was committed. Someone was killed, and a foreigner arrived to the town, and he was accused of the murder. he was innocent, and he was claiming because of his innocence, but you know, now nobody cared, so he was to be hanged because of the crime. In a moment, he has to be presented to the judge, and he said that he was so innocent that the judge and the other people in the room, they were having a feast, so there was a rooster roasted on the table, and he said, I'm innocent, so when you are going to hang me, this rooster is gonna crow. It's gonna get alive and crow. And that happens. So they realized that he was innocent and he saved his life. So that is the legend behind the rooster of Barcelos that you are going to find all over the country as a souvenir. So to get started, I'm gonna show you, you're gonna have an overview of the country with some beautiful images. We are inviting you to come to visit Portugal. From the beaches, and from nice hotels, beautiful national parks, countries. Portugal is in fact a very green country, in particular from east to the north, much more than others in the port wine, very important in ports of Portugal, nice white villages, monuments like this in Porto. This is the south, the Algarve. This is the north, in the mountains. From the south, from the Algarve, you could watch whales and also dolphins. And bridges connecting the two rivers, Tagus River by Lisbon, and also the Douro River by Porto. Fortification, castles, and night hotels all together in same areas. Enjoy the nature like this in the Algarve. National Park. Nazaré with the waves. And some of the islands. And shrines like the Tagus.
Visit our sea, our sun, our heritage.
Portugal has been elected 3 years in a row like the best destination to visit, so you should come. Before getting into the cities, I'm going to give you like a little bit of context with some brief history of the country. So, well, in the prehistoric, in the pre-Roman times, we have in the area some tribes, the Celtiberians, from the 2000 before Christ. In Portugal, in particular, they were called Lusitanians. Then, the whole Iberian Peninsula became a province of the Roman Empire with the name of Hispania, and the area of Portugal, taking the name from the Lusitanians, was called Lusitania. From the 5th century, some German tribes, in particular Suebi and Visigoths, they came into the peninsula, and in the area of Portugal, the Suebi, they set a kingdom. In the western part, in the eastern part of the peninsula, the Visigoths did the same. Later on, the Visigoths take everything over, and the Suebi were expelled. In the 711, the Muslims, they conquest the whole Iberian Peninsula, and they established this Caliphate of Cordoba with the name of Al-Andalus. At the same time, later on, some little small Christian kingdoms arose in the north, like the Kingdom of Leon, of Navarre, of Barcelona. And from the 9th to the 12th century, from those Christian kingdoms, in particular from the kingdom of Asturias and Leon, a small county was set, the county of Portugal, by the actual Porto. And from that county of Portugal, the kingdom of Portugal was established by Alfonso I Enriquez after defeating the Muslims in the Battle of Ourique in the year 1139. So Portugal is considered one of the oldest nations in the world. Since the 12th century till the 1360, pretty much, they reconquest the whole country and they have preserved the same borders with some exceptions till now. From the 14th to the 17th century is a moment of the splendor of the Portuguese, the golden age of the Portuguese, because of the enterprises they started with the discoveries. So they set, because of that, an empire. The guy that started with this odyssey was Henry the Navigator, a prince, a minor prince in the royal family. So from the 1336, when they discovered the Canary Islands in the Atlantic, you could see over there more or less, they were exploring the coast of Africa. They arrived, Vasco da Gama arrived to India, and in the 1542, they arrived to Japan. And so all these areas were Portuguese dominions. And also, they arrived to the coast of Brazil in the 1500s. Later on, became an empire till the 70s of the 20th century. At the same time, Spain, the Spanish monarchy, they were, trying to do the same, and Columbus arrived to America, so they were having conflicts on that. So they decided to divide the world in two by the Treaty of Tordesillas in the year 1494. So from that meridian of Tordesillas to the east, all of that land will be for Portugal, all the discoveries and all the wealth. And from the meridian of Tordesillas to the west, all of that will be for Spain. So that's why Spain got, all the colonies in America except Brazil, because the meridian was touching Brazil, and the Portuguese, they got all the wealth and the colonies from the east. At the end of this period, for 60 years, Portugal and Spain came together in the same monarchy under the Philippine dynasty. They weren't that happy, so they started a restoration war that ended in the 1680. During the 18th century, that era in Portugal is known as the Pombalin era, because this guy, Marquis de Pombal, was the iron fist of the government of the nation, and he was very clever. He did a lot of things to organize the country, in particular after a big earthquake that happened in Lisbon in the year 1755, that destroyed most of the city, but not only the city, other parts in Portugal and also in Spain affected some cities. So he reconstructed the city of Lisbon also. During the 19th century, conflicted century as in other countries in Europe, starting with the Napoleon invasion of Portugal. So the royal family need to go to Brazil, as you could see in the picture. And later on, they had, problems with the succession. So they have a kind of civil war in between two brothers. In the 1822, was declared the independence of Brazil. One of the kings of Portugal declared the independence of Brazil, although later on came back to the country, to Portugal. During the 20th century, well, they set a definitive republic in the 1910. In the 30s, this guy here, Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, proclaimed a kind of dictatorship till the 1970s. And finally, they got the democracy with the revolution, the Carnation Revolution in the 1974, and in the 1986, they joined the European Union together with Spain. That was a little bit of a piece of history over the country to have some context. So we are going to start with the main city in the north, with Porto, the essence of Portugal, because everything started here in this area of the country. So we have here a map of the city by the River Douro. The River Douro came into the country from Spain. It's the second longest river in the Iberian Peninsula towards the Atlantic. The city has about 250,000 inhabitants, although the metropolitan area is 1,800,000. It's one of the biggest in Europe. Was founded in the 9th century by Vimara Perez, commissioned by the King of Asturias and Leon. And the whole historic center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the 1996. So let's take a look. This is the historic center. We could divide it in two. The city center or Baixa, the downtown, in this case is uptown, because the city of Porto is very, very hilly. So this city center is uphill. And then we have the historic center, proper historic center, the one declared by the UNESCO, by the river, going downhill to the river. So we are going to explore this area first. So we'll start in the São Bento train station. It's a very good starting point because we have a welcome center for tourists over there. From there, we'll walk downhill by Flowers Street, Rua das Flores, and from there, we'll arrive to Henry the Navigator Square. And then to the area of the river, the Ribeira neighborhood. And finally, we could check out the area of the cathedral at the top of the hill, at the top of another hill. To get from the riverside to the hill, you could walk up if you want it, but also there is a funicular going from the river to the hill, and also a small one connecting also the river with the half of the little hill, so you need to still walk upstairs a little bit. But this second one is free. The other one you need to pay for. So starting in this São Bento station, it's a kind of French-style building from the end of the 1800s, but it's beautiful inside because the hall is totally covered with 20,000 tiles all over the hall, like this. Historic events, works of the labor of the fields. This is, for instance, Henry the Navigator after the conquest of Ceuta. From this station of São Bento, we could walk by this pedestrian Rua das Flores, full of shopping opportunities, restaurants, nice cafes, nice balconies too. And then we'll arrive to the Praça Infante Don Enrique, Henry the Navigator Square. Like it's a central point in this area near to the river. In here we had two important buildings, the Palacio da Bolsa from the middle of the 1800s, kind of neoclassical style. It was the stock exchange of the city, now belongs to the City Hall and is the headquarters of the Commercial Association of Porto, a very important institution. It has a beautiful hall for receptions or any kind of events. An impressive, staircase made with stone. And some beautiful rooms like this, which is the Maslin or Arab room that you could hire for any events, a wedding, a concert, anything. Behind the palace, together in the back side of the palace, we have the San Francis Church, Iglesia San Francisco, building between the 14th and 17th century, so different styles from the Gothic to the Baroque. In fact, inside is really Baroque, extremely Baroque Portuguese. Everything is covered with golden leaves over the wood, the carved wood. So they were afraid of leaving just a space without decoration. So you could see some details of the ceiling, the main altar piece. And from that square within, we'll arrive to the riverside, the Ribeira neighborhood by the Douro River. Very colorful balconies, houses over there, but full of restaurants, shops, not only souvenirs, some handicraft too. The central point of this Ribeira neighborhood is the Praça da Ribeira, with some beautiful terraces to have a drink or some meal. In this area also, you could visit a small museum called Casa do Infante. Henry the Navigator is the Infante, the prince, because he was born here at the end of the 1300s, 14th century. It had different uses like mint to make coins, the fortress to keep the treasure. And nowadays they have an important exhibition, an interesting exhibition about, all the discoveries of Portugal, but also some remainings from other periods, like the Roman period, because in this area of Porto, there was a Roman settlement too. The origin of the name, Portugal, came from that Roman period. So that is a picture of the exhibition and the discoveries. And then from this riverside, you'll see one of the landmarks of the city, the Bridge of Louis I. It's a double-deck bridge built in the 1886 by the Belgian engineer who was a disciple of Gustave Eiffel, the one of the tower in Paris. You could see there's a double deck. In the upper part is a pedestrian sidewalk, but also it's for the subway system. And in the lower part for cars, and also it has a pedestrian sidewalk. But let's take a better look over the bridge. From this side of the river, you have beautiful pictures. It's connecting the city of Porto with the opposite city of Gaia, Villanova de Gaia. So from the upper deck, you could see to the right an overview over Porto, and to the left, an overview over Gaia. Gaia was the place, the city, where the cellars, the companies, the wine companies, they were having, they were keeping the wine barrels in the cellars. Still now, you could visit some of them. They have some tours. It's very interesting. And also it's an area for amusement. Restaurants, exhibitions, events happened in this promenade along the river. Villanova de Gaia. Some of the companies, they have museums like this Sandeman, a very important company producing wine and port wine. Other thing that you could do once by the river is to take one of these river cruises. They call it 6 bridges cruises because Porto has 6 bridges. Yeah? So you are going to take one of these particular boats called Ravelo. It's the traditional boat to transport the barrels from the Douro Valley till Porto, till Villanova de Gaia. So they have a modern replica for, the cruises going along the river. And a part of the main bridge, there are other 2 very important, like this one of Maria Pia, Doña Maria Pia, was built even before the bridge of Louis I. It was built like 20 years before, 1870 something, and it was designed by the same engineer, but with assistance of Eiffel, because Eiffel was living in Portugal, in Porto, for a while in that period. And then a much modern one, but still very impressive, the one of Rábida Bridge from the 60s. At the time it had, you know, the largest span made with reinforced concrete. You know? From the area of the river you wanted, after a nice meal, you could visit the area of the cathedral. The cathedral was built in between the 12th and the 17th century. So started kind of Romanesque, so it looks like a fortress, going to Gothic, but also inside they have, you know, other kind of Renaissance and Baroque decorations. Let's take a look. So this cloister is like Romanesque, but going to Gothic. Could you see it? Tiles all over. You will find tiles, these kind of traditional blue and white tiles all over Portugal, with the religious themes in this case. The cathedral is located in the Barredo neighborhood, very colorful, traditional, one of the oldest parts of the city, with these very narrow and stiff streets with lots of stairs. So we are done with the historic center. So we are going to explore a little bit, you know, the city center called Baixa, with this, you know, uphill, downtown, uptown. So the central point should be the Liberty Square, Praça da Liberdade, connecting with this Aliados Avenue, Alliance Avenue, because of the historic treaty in between Portugal and England, the oldest treaty in the world from the 1300s. And from that Liberty Square, if you turn to the right, uphill, because it's very hilly area too. So the avenue is like in a valley. So we have two hills to the sides, one to each side. So we'll arrive to the area of Santa Catarina Street, a very commercial and busy area. And to the other hill, to the other side, by Rua dos Clérigos, we arrive to this Clérigos kind of district. Also very trendy, fashionable, shopping and important monuments. So this is the Aliados Avenue, with the City Hall at the back. The Liberty Square with the statue of Peter IV, the king that went to Brazil and came back. The kind of eclectic City Hall from the 1920. And if we move from here to the right, we'll arrive to Santa Catarina Street, which is mostly pedestrian, full of shops, restaurant, coffees, place. It's very busy all the time. You could find still now some of these beautiful shops from the early 1900s. But in the entrance of the street, at the beginning of the street, there is an impressive church, impressive because of the facade totally covered with tiles, the one of Santo Ildefonso from the 18th century. The interior is not that impressive, but you want to take a look. And this is a stop you should have when you are in Santa Catarina Street. It's the Majestic Cafe from the 1921. Very old-fashioned place, traditional decoration, where you could enjoy a nice cup of coffee or tea or chocolate or pastries. It's sometimes very, very crowded, so you need to wait outside to get your table. Another stop you should have in this area is this Café Santiago. It's a regular restaurant, but very famous because in here they prepare one of the delicacies in Porto, the francesinha, which is a huge sandwich. You have it over there, made with different kind of meat, eggs, potatoes, and a special sauce, a little bit spicy. Normally we have it, or they have it with fries and a very cold beer. So francesinha is a sandwich traditional from Porto. You could find this sandwich all over the city, but that Café Santiago is one of the most famous places to prepare the francesinha. And at the end of the street, another impressive, in this case, a chapel, totally covered with these blue and white tiles. If you like that kind of art. So from this area, we need to go downhill again to Liberty Avenue, to Aliados Avenue, and then uphill again to the Clérigos Quarter. This is a little more trendy, fashionable area with some luxury brands. But also they have, flea markets some days of the week. Nice squares like this with the Lion's Fountain. But the most important site here is the Clérigos Church and Tower. Clérigos means clergy, the priest. It was a building built by design by Niccolò Nasoni, a very important architect from Italy. He designed all the places all the buildings in Porto as well, from the 18th century, 1700s. So there are two buildings, the church on one side and then the tower in the other side. So this is the entrance to the church. Some details of interior. And this is the tower. It has about 240 steps to climb to the top. You need to pay for that. It's not for free after the exercise. But you'll have a beautiful overview of the city. Another stop you should make in this area of Clérigos is the Lelo bookstore, Librería Lelo e Irmão. Why? Because it became extremely popular. I don't know, you have read, or you probably, I'm sure you know, these Harry Potter books and movies. So the author, J.K. Rowling, she was living in Porto for a while, and it's said that was inspired by the interior of this bookstore, considered one of the most beautiful bookstores in the world, according to the critics. So she was inspired for some of the scenes in the first movie of Harry Potter. When Harry Potter goes to the city to buy some magic stuff. So I think, I don't remember exactly. But the bookstore is really, really charming. And it's very crowded. So became so much popular. So you need now, since some years ago, you need to pay for getting into the bookstore. It's really crazy. So you pay something like €5, but if you buy a book, you'll get it's like a voucher, you get a discount. Probably you are overpaying the books anyway. Okay? In this area also, they have another beautiful church covered with tiles in interior and exterior, the Carmelite Carmo Church from the 18th century. And also in the area, to have a relaxed break, we have this beautiful garden of Cordoaria, just in the middle of the city, very peaceful. Some years ago, the Spanish artist Juan Muñoz, he designed this kind of funny, kind of Chinese guys, Oriental guys at least, they put several of these sculptures in the park and became so popular that everyone want to have a selfie or a picture with them. They are just laughing. So, and finally, we are going to I want to give you some other sites you could visit in Porto, in the much modern area of Boa Vista Avenue, the longest street in the city, connecting the area near to the city center till the mouth of the river Douro, to the area of Foz and Matosinhos. So in one side we have a modern building, a concert hall, Casa de Música. The other side, in the middle of the, near to the middle of the avenue, we have a very important museum, the Fundação Serralves. And in the other extreme of the avenue, we have a fortress and also the city park, a very important part of the city. To get there, you could take one of those electric trams, old-fashioned trams, from the city center, from the almost from the river, from the Ribeira neighborhood, till this area where they have another little park in the mouth of the river. It's the tram number 1. It's a very nice, pleasant tramway. So this is the building I told you. It was built, designed by Rem Koolhaas in the 2000 and opened in the 2005 as a concert hall, Casa de Música, the Música, House of Music. It's very beautiful and very good sound inside, very good acoustics. And this is the museum, the Serralves Foundation, which is both a contemporary art museum, a beautiful park and gardens, and a stunning Art Deco villa, the one in pink in the left picture. Those are part of the gardens. It's a very beautiful museum of contemporary art with exhibitions, and one of the most visited museums in Portugal. And this is a fortress in the other side of the avenue by the mouth of the river, the fort of São Francisco Xavier, also known as the Cheese Castle, Castelo do Queijo, from the 17th century, because the stone, the rock where the castle was built, it looked like a cheese because it has some plenty of little holes, apparently, so they call it that way. So let's take an overview of this Porto and the north area of the country. Porto with the bridge, it is Chaves, another city in the north, San Balneary, the River Douro, the Douro Valley, port wine, and other cellars, tradition handicraft. This is Guimarães, the cradle of the nation. The castle. This is Amarante, a beautiful town nearby Porto. Natural park in the north of Spain, the area very close to Spain, vindo. Some villages, one. The connection between Spain and Portugal, and shrines like the one of Bom Jesus in Braga, and this is the city of Porto. Douro Valley again. Very beautiful, the north of Portugal, if you have the chance to visit. So we escape the central Portugal because we don't have time for everything. So we are going to focus in Porto and Lisbon. So Lisbon, the Lisboa region with the capital, It's the capital of the discoveries because Lisbon became one of the most important metropolis during the time of the Portuguese Empire because of the wealth coming from India, from Japan, from Asia, in particular the spices. Okay? So this is the greater map of Lisbon. The population of Lisbon is about 500,000 inhabitants. Also, the metropolitan area is much bigger, almost 3 million. It was founded by the Romans in the 138 before Christ with the name of Olisipo. And the area of Belém is a UNESCO World Heritage Site since the 1983. So let's take a closer view. So the city is, or the central city is divided in several areas like the one along the Liberty Avenue, Avenida Liberdade, the one called Baixa, with the lower part of the city by the riverside, then the one around the castle and the cathedral in the Alfama district, the oldest part of the city, and the Bairro Alto, which literally means, you know, the higher or the high neighborhood. And then we have the Belém district, you know, going towards the mouth of the river Tagus, Tejo in Portugal. So when you are visiting Lisbon, most of the hotels are located along or around the Liberty Avenue. So a very nice starting point is the Marquês de Pombal Square. So from there, you could walk along the avenue till 2 squares, Restauradores, and Rocio, connecting with the lower part of the city, Baixa. So this is the area we are going to explore first. So this is a view of the city from the Marquês de Pombal Square. The avenue is much longer than looks in that picture, because of the point of view, I guess. This is a statue, an impressive statue dedicated to one of the most important ministries of the history of Portugal, the Marquis of Pombal, with the lion symbolizing the power. And this is the Edward VII Park. Edward VII, King of the United Kingdom, because of the special relationship that they have in between the countries. So they named the park because a visit that Edward VII paid to Portugal. This is a beautiful avenue with, you know, 3 lime trees. And you are going to find this kind of a special pavement all over Portugal, but in particular in Lisbon, which is called a Portuguese pavement of Calçada Portuguesa. Is really beautiful and really difficult to repair also. This is a luxury avenue. It's like the Champs-Élysées of Lisbon. So you'll find, you know, luxury brands like Cartier or many others like Prada, Louis Vuitton, you know, those expensive ones. Little squares with this in particular is a monument dedicated to the soldiers who died in the First World War. Portugal participated in that one, not in the second. So then, after walking along the avenue, we'll arrive to this Praça dos Restauradores, Restoration Square, because of the war of the independence of Portugal against the monarchy of Spain during the 17th century. So we have this monolith, or this monument dedicated to the heroes of that war. In this square, Dos Restauradores, it's important for you to remember about this kind of funicular called Elevador da Gloria, one of the oldest in the country. It was inaugurated in 1885, because this funicular connects this lower part of the avenue with the Barrio Alto, the higher neighborhood, okay? One of the most traditional areas in Lisbon. This is the funicular going up here. And the second square connecting the avenue with the river is this Praça do Rocio. The real name is after the King Peter IV, the one at the top of the column, but everyone knows it as Rocio Square. You have beautiful fountains in the square. Also, the neoclassical style National Theatre Queen Mary II. Very important cultural venue in Lisbon, sorry. And then from that square, we'll get into what is called Baixa Pombalina, because the whole area of Lisbon near to the river was totally destroyed by the earthquake in the middle of the 1700s. So the Marquis of Pombal made a plan, designing, you know, this kind of net of streets, very, very, very neoclassical. So it was named after him. So it's called Baixa Pombalina. Baixa in Portuguese means lower. The main street is called Rua Augusta, which is mainly pedestrian, full of shops, restaurants, cafeterias, as you could see. And one of the stops in the middle of the Baixa is this lift, Elevador of Santa Justa, also very old, from the 1902, connecting this Baixa with the barrio of Chiado, a small neighborhood full of shops and nice areas. Very old cabin, and at the top they have a beautiful and impressive viewpoint. And it's much better, it will take it, right? So let's go up to enjoy the views from Santa Justa lift. Okay. Impressive views over the whole city. And then, after crossing the Baixa, we'll arrive to the river Tagus, Tejo in Portuguese, the longest of the Iberian Peninsula, starting around nearby Toledo, not far away from Madrid, and having the mouth in the Atlantic by Lisbon. This is the Praça do Comércio, Commerce Square. This is a view from the river with the Baixa behind the square. The archery, beautiful, with some flea markets sometimes. And the main building in the middle of the square is this Rua Augusta Arch, which is a little museum. You could go up and have a view from the top, from the rooftop of the arch. So from there, we are going to visit now two of the hills to the both sides of La Baixa. The one of the area of the Alfama and the castle first, and then the Bairro Alto, the higher district. This neighborhood called Alfama is around the castle, and the cathedral. Very trendy, charming streets, as you could see in the pictures, all over the neighborhood. You could get there by the streetcars. Some other views. The much traditional and the oldest area in town. If you climb enough, you'll arrive to some of the viewpoints, the miradouros. There are two important ones. The Santa Lucia viewpoint. These are the views from there, over the river. And Portas do Sol, another viewpoint, also with views of the city and also of the river. And then we could check out the Cathedral of St. Mary Major. This is the Cathedral of Lisbon, Sé de Lisboa in Portuguese, built from the 12th to the 14th century, as well as the Porto one. It looks like a fortress because at that time they just reconquest the country from the Muslims. So, well, they built this kind of buildings, starting like in Romanesque and going to Gothic, but the interior sometimes have other kind of details. Like here to the left, you could appreciate it's more Gothic, but to the left is much more Romanesque style. And then the castle of St. George, São Jorge Castle. In this hill, there were settlements from the prehistoric times. The Romans, all the people that were living in this area, they have a kind of fortification of buildings in this hill. But the castle, as we know now, was built in between the 10th and the 14th century. This is the view from the city and also the main entrance to the whole complex that has an archaeological site and a beautiful garden, some viewpoints, and also a black chamber to have particular views of the city. Some other views of the walls and the gardens. So the best way to get there is taking one of these trams, one of the streetcars, and the one crossing the city from one hill to the other is in the 28th. You need to be very careful when taking this kind of streetcars in Porto or in particular in Lisbon. They are full of pickpockets. Are charming and nice, but just be careful with that. Always crowded, so you can like wait for more than one. But it's really nice to ride the car. So now we are coming from the hill of the cathedral of the castle, and we are driving to the other hill, to the one of the Vairo Alto or Chiado too. So we are here, Vairo Alto and Chiado. So remember the elevador, the funicular I told you that we could take in Restauradores Square. So this is the one. So from Restauradores, taking the funicular of Gloria, we'll arrive to a viewpoint called São Pedro de Alcântara. It's kind of a garden with beautiful views over the Baixa and the city center and the river a little more away. If we walk a little bit more from there, we'll arrive to this Largo Trindade Coelho, which is a square. Largo in Portuguese means square. So we have a church and a museum of sacred art. But this area is also the access to the streets of Barrio Alto. This is the square. The colorful facade, some of them covers with tiles, decorated because it's a kind of area of amusement, restaurants, cafes, clubs, discos. You see, all over the street, you will find, terraces to have a meal, but also at night became very crowded with people having drinks and having parties. From there, following, going downhill by the Misericordia Street, which is this street. See the beautiful facades with tiles. We'll arrive to this square, the square dedicated to Luís de Camões, which is one of the most important writers of the Golden Age of Portugal. Is considered the equivalent to Shakespeare for the English literature, of to Cervantes for the Spanish one. So Luís de Camões. So this is a meeting point in between the Barrio Alto and the Chiado. And you need to stop in here. This is one of the most popular or most well-known coffee shops in Portugal, called a Brasileira, from the 1905, with a very article, old-fashioned interior, but very good coffee. In Portugal, they love coffee. They have very good coffee, and they love to have plain coffee, a small coffee, like an espresso in Italy, similar kind of coffee. They love it. They hate to have coffee with milk. So if you are in Portugal, don't ask coffee with milk. They will help you. No, I'm joking with you. But they like, plain coffee, no sugar, no milk. In the square of this Brasileira coffee shop, we have a statue dedicated to Fernando Pessoa, which is also one of the most important writers of the Portuguese literature. He was living in between the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. He died in 1933 or so. So he used to come here to the Brasileira, a Brasileira coffee shop, to write. So you could have a picture with him taking a coffee in that beautiful terrace. And nearby this area, also in the Chiado, we have the Largo do Carmo, the Carmo Square, which is access to the Archaeological Museum do Carmo, which in fact is a former convent that was destroyed by the earthquake. So after being abandoned during a while, they decided to left the convent that way, and they set there an archaeological collection. This is the interior without the rooftop, left by the earthquake, and also the views from the exterior. And this is a little bit of another view over the traditional Fado music. Let's hear a little bit.
Andam cantigas a bailar de boca em boca, tristes pisadas em comunhão. Andam guitarras a gemer de mão em mão. Por isso é que mereceu fama de poético, por condão é fatalista, atiraram com a lama como prédio, por ser nobre e ser fadista. Porque após a noite escura
for the Fado, you can see they use the Spanish guitar, but a particular guitar, the Portuguese guitar. It has more strings.
Esta Lisboa de outras eras, dos 5 reis das esperas e das toiranas, e das festas, das seculares procissões, dos populares dragões, gaviões, que cheiram fogo ao mar.
Okay. So the Fado is a music that was brought by the people, mainly sailors, coming from their voyages and having relations in the taverns. So but became popular, particularly in Lisbon. So there are many places where you could hear Fado, in the Alfama district or in other places. But in the Chiado and the Barrio Alto, there are several very nice. All of them are for tourism, okay? But some of them are more quality, some of them, they have more quality music than others. If you are interested, you could ask me later and I'll send you some name. So to finish with the city of Lisbon, we are going to visit this area of Belém, which is in direction to the mouth of the river from the city. So we'll meet first the impressive bridge over the river Tejo, the river Tagus, 25th of April bridge, and then the area of Belém, historic area of Belém, which is the one protected by UNESCO. This is another view from the river. In the way from the city, I will suggest you to stop in this market, Mercado da Ribeira, which is an area called Cais de Sodré, which is a kind of harbor for ferries. It was a traditional market, still it is a traditional market, but from some years ago, they set there kind of this food court with different restaurants, small restaurants with different kind of food, mainly Portuguese, but also pizza, for instance. So you could buy your food in any of those stalls and then, you know, come to the middle to enjoy with your friends and or family. Okay? So it's a nice stop before getting into Belém. And in the way to Belém, we'll find this Ponte 25 de Abril, 25th of April bridge. And yes, it looks like the one in San Francisco, like the Golden Gate, because it was built by the same company, the American Bridge Company, and was inaugurated in the 1966, after the name of the dictator Salazar at that moment. But after the revolution, in the 1974, they changed it to the 25th of April, the day of the revolution. This is a whole view of the bridge, very alike with the one in San Francisco. So we arrive finally to the area of Belém. This is one of the sites, the Tower of Belém, the Torre de Belém from the 16th century. Was a kind of fortress to defend the access from the sea to the river to the city. It has other purposes at the end. It was a jail, but the main, the purpose of the construction was kind of a protection of the city from anyone coming from the sea. So from the rooftop, some views of the interior. And this is the Padrao dos Descubrimientos, which literally means, you know, the monument to the discoveries. It was built in the 60s, and it has a status of all the very important explorers, like Vasco da Gama, Magellan's, Cabral. Henry the Navigator is the first one in line. So the one who started the time of the exploration. Also, it had the status of very important people along the history, not only navigators or sailors. In the square of this area, we'll find this windrose mosaic with a map of the world with all the places discovered by the Portuguese and the year when they arrived there. Like this, Cabo da Boa Esperança, or Madagascar, all of them are you know, put into the map. And the most important building here is the monastery of the Jeremites, Mosteiro dos Jerónimos, from the 15th century, built in the late Gothic Manueline style. Manueline because it was named after the king Manuel I, one of the most important kings in this time of the golden age of the Portuguese discoveries. It's a huge, immense building with a church and to the right and the convent to the left. Now it houses the Archaeological Museum and also part of the Maritime Museum to the other side. a details of one of the entrance, very ornate, very decorated, using, you know, naval symbols like ropes, anchors, related with the discoveries. This is a detail of interior. And in here, we have the memorials and the burials of some members of the royal family, but also some other important characters in the history of Portugal, like Vasco da Gama, the discoverer of the first one arriving from Europe to India. A view of the cloister. In this area, also a much modern building, also very interesting, is the Belém Cultural Center. It was opened something like 15 or 20 years ago. And it houses an important collection of modern art of Berardo. It was a very important collector of Portugal, and he decided to put the whole collection of his in this museum. But you can't leave Belém without visiting this pastry shop. It is the one of the pastéis de Belém, the pastéis de nata, the famous pastry of Portugal, the famous pastry of Lisbon since 1837. Normally you need to queue outside. This is nothing. Normally it's much longer lines over there to get inside, to buy the pastries. Also, they have tables inside. I don't know, you have tried it. They are kind of custard cream, little pastry. Okay, normally you put cinnamon and sugar at the top. It's really, really good. And beyond Lisbon, we could visit some cities nearby. The most important one, because it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is the city of Sintra. A city of for the royals and the noble families along the history. So we have several palaces we could visit. The one just in the middle of the town is the Palacio Nacional, the National Palace, built between the 15th and the 16th century. You have two views of the palace. Some of the beautiful interiors covered with tiles, with wooden carved ceilings, kind of Moorish style decoration too. Other of the sites of the visit you could have in Sintra is this Quinta da Regaleira. Quinta means like property, hacienda, something like that. It was built in 1910, a kind of neo-Gothic, very elaborated neo-Manuel in style, by a very wealthy family coming from Porto, although it was sold to different owners. I think now the owners of the complex are a Japanese company, if I'm correct. So but it's very beautiful, not only because of the building, mainly because of the gardens, because all over the garden they have symbols, because the family, the owners, the original owners, they were following this kind of Masonic or kind of other kind of philosophies, talking about the spirits, the self-knowledge. So all over the park you have references to that, to the self-knowledge. And there's a particular spot, which is a kind of well. So you need to start at the top of the well, going down to the earth. It's a kind of purification of your soul, of yourself. So when you are purified, you need to get outside, but this kind of groots. There are several ways to do it, okay? It's really, really impressive, this Quinta da Regaleira. And finally, last but not least, this very colorful kind of Walt Disney palace, Palacio da Pena, built in the middle of the 1800s by the Prince Ferdinand. He was the husband of the Queen Mary II. I mean, it has all kind of styles. New Moorish, new Gothic, new Romanesque, all over the place. See, an overview. But in Sintra also you could go shopping, lots of opportunities, have a nice meal at so many restaurants, and you can't miss another typical traditional pastry. It's called traveseiro, the one to the right, or queijada to the left, made with almond and custard cream. Another city you could visit in nearby Lisbon is the cities, because they are together, of Cascais and Estoril, with nice beaches and holiday resorts, and also the very famous casino of Estoril. This is a view of Cascais. This is Estoril, and the popular casino. Became very popular also because you're familiar with the 007 novels. The first one, Casino Royale, apparently was inspired by this casino at the time of the Second World War. He was the author, I don't remember the name now, the author was living here in Portugal, because Portugal and Lisbon, because they were neutral, became a place for spies. So all the nations fighting in the war, they have spies in here, in Lisbon, in Estoril, in Cascais, plotting against the other ones. And something you should do when you are in Cascais is wait at Santini's for your ice cream. Probably Santini's has the best ice cream in Portugal or even in the world. They have several branches all over the country, but the original one was opened first in Cascais. Italian gelato, really, really, really good. And the last stop in this area is Cabo da Roca. It's a cape, and it's Europe's westernmost point of the continent. Beautiful views from the lighthouse. See, Cabo da Roca, here where the land ends and where the sea begins. It's a saying of Camões. So let's take a look, a little overview with some images of Lisbon and its region. The bridge, 25th of April, Plaza Marquês de Pombal. This is the other side of the river. This is the Baixa, Pombalina, the castle of St. George, the access to the castle, tram going to Alfama, Baixa, the area of Belém. Let's go again to the parking for the 7th, Belém and the monastery, the monument of discoveries. This is a modern area of Lisbon, Campo das Nações. Sintra with the Palacio de Pena, Church of Estrela in Lisbon, Castle. This is the Palace of Mafra, nearby, the Royal Palace of Mafra, nearby, Cabo da Roca. This is Cascais, Marina, by the Arena in Lisbon, and some of the beaches. And finally, we are going to have a last stop in the city of Évora, in the middle of the Alentejo, this area in between Lisbon and central Portugal and the south and the Algarve. So Évora is the most important city over there. Also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is an overview of the city. The main square is called Praça do Giraldo, probably your meeting point you're visiting, with the Church of St. Anthony. Then a view of the Roman and medieval walls. They have several part of the walls from different periods. This is an aqueduct still working from the 16th century. You see the aqueducts, crossing the highway, and then the access to the city. The Roman temple from the 1st century, wrongly known as the Temple of Diana or Artemis, because apparently it wasn't dedicated to that goddess, but everyone knows it as that, in the middle of the city. The cathedral, built between the 12th and 13th century. And probably this is the most unique stop, the San Francis Church, San Francisco, the Iglesia San Francisco, from the building between the 15th and the 16th century. Some of the interiors, but you are visiting here because a particular spot, the Chapel of the Bones, built in between 16th and 17th century, is all covered with bones and skulls. Apparently, the monks decided to build it that way for us to reflect on our life in our death. So in the entrance of the chapel is written in Portuguese, "Nos osos que aquí estamos, pelos vossos esperamos." The bones which we are here, for your bones are waiting. Something like that. So just to tell us that, think about your life, because at the end you'll be here like us. You'll end up being a bone. But it's a particular unique place, as you could see. And as we are in the Alentejo, let me show you a little bit of this area, which is also the area where they produce cork. It is one of the most important production of the world. So you want to buy a souvenir made with cork, Portugal is your place. The Alentejo is not really well known, but it has a lot of things to offer. From beaches, resorts, nature, historical cities. This was our visit to Portugal. So thank you so much for being there, for watching. And thank you again, Mara, for having me and give me the chance to share these beautiful countries with you and your guests.
Thank you, Manuel. I have to say that I have never been to Portugal yet. And it's obviously on the bucket list now, but it is absolutely breathtaking. I can absolutely see why people go there and retire there and live there and move there, because it just seems to be the place that gives you the feeling of life. And it seems so wonderful. I can't wait to go with my group in 2023. I'm going to do this Q&A a little bit differently, if you're okay with that, Manuel, and I'm springing this on you. But there were a lot of questions in the Q&A about the time to travel. So let's talk about it in this way. Let's talk about what are the benefits of going in the summertime? What are the shoulder seasons? How is the weather in the winter? Can you explain the temperature differences and the crowd differences across the year for us so that people understand?
Yeah, well, the weather in Portugal is not as hot as in Spain. As some people they think, you know, the whole Iberian Peninsula is really hot in summer. It could be hot in summer in some areas, but it's not as hot as in the rest of the Iberian Peninsula because they are facing the Atlantic. Yeah? So the water is much colder all along the year, even in the summertime, but in particular in the north. So Porto and the northern area of Portugal, it could be kind of cold in the winter, even in the spring and the autumn. But in the summertime, it's more pleasant. You know? Lisbon and the south could be a little more higher temperatures, but not as much as other areas in the south of Spain or the south of Italy. Okay, so I will tell you maybe spring, September, October also are very good months to visit Portugal. Avoid maybe August and July, but still, if you are visiting the north of Portugal in summertime, it is very pleasant. But could be rainy also, even in summertime.
Okay, good. Let's talk about language. How easy is it for English-speaking people to navigate? If you speak Spanish, is Portuguese close enough that you understand? Do you even need to speak the language of the country? Talk to us a little bit about getting around and the language.
Yeah, Portuguese and Spanish are very, very similar. In fact, are the two most similar languages. I speak some Portuguese, but even I could be understood and I could understand them. And they speak very good English, in fact, and they speak a lot of languages because they live in some areas, in particular in Lisbon and Porto and Algarve from the tourism. So they are very, very, very clever on that. And in particular because they have very good English teachers from little kids. So most of the people you are going to meet in your visit, they speak English as well as Spanish or French or obviously Portuguese. But if you speak Spanish, you won't have problem to be understood or to speak because it's very, very close.
Okay, let's have you share a little bit about tourism, safety, and traveling as a single woman. Are any of those concerns, other than normal precautions that we take when we travel all over the world? You know, you mentioned pickpocketing, and I think that brought up some questions. Why don't you talk about tourism, safety, and those things?
Yeah, Portugal is a very safe country in general. Obviously, when you are in a big city like Lisbon, you need to be careful. And when you are in a packet area like the Baixa or some of the side, you need to be cautious, like you are in Paris or London or Rome. Okay, but it's not really a dangerous country. The police is very approachable. If you have any problem, normally they will help you right away. So I don't consider Portugal a dangerous country in that matter. Taking normal precautions.
Great.
But if you are in a street car going to Alfama to the castle, probably you should check where you have your wallet.
Let's talk about traveling around Portugal. Is renting a car a typical thing? Obviously, there are, for a tourist perspective, there are some river cruises, there are some trains. How do you travel around Portugal? Give us some distances between Porto and Lisbon. Give us an understanding of travel within the country.
Yeah, well, it's not a very big country, so from Lisbon to Porto by car, normally something like 4 hours, less than that sometimes if you are in the highway. And they have trains connecting, many trains connecting Lisbon and Porto, the two most important cities. and they have international airports in Porto, in Lisbon, in Fado. Those three are the most important ones. Renting a car is easy. They have very good highways, but you need to pay for them because they have a kind of particular system. You need to register yourself in a web, so you'll get like a code, and you are paying on the way, okay, at the end of your visit. And yeah, it's easy to move around. And also they have the river cruises. You have river cruises, in particular in Porto, from the Douro Valley to Porto and the other way around. And not in Lisbon. You have river cruises around, okay? But
Right.
they have a very important, in both Porto and Lisbon, a cruise terminal for big boats.
When traveling to Portugal, and let's talk about it from somebody's perspective who has never been, how many days would you reserve to see the country?
Well, if you want to see the whole country, I would say at least 10.
And then highlights?
Maybe a week to see Porto and Lisbon.
Let's talk about Lisbon. Somebody noted that there was a lot of graffiti in Lisbon the last time they visited. Is that still an issue, or are they embracing it?
Well, they're embracing it.
Right.
In fact, in some areas they have walls dedicated to the graffiti, and some are very artistic, okay? But yes, you'll find graffiti all over the city. Normally they clean up, in particular in the area more trendy and, you know, stylish and luxury areas. But yes, it's something that is impossible to keep up with them.
Can you talk a little bit about the Jewish history in Portugal?
Yeah, well, the Jews were expelled from Spain in the 1492. So some of them, they went to Portugal. So for a while they were protected, in particular in Lisbon and in Porto. But later on, with the time, also the King of Portugal, they were they wanted to expel them. So they had several problems in Portugal too. But they have a Jewish community. It's not very big. They have synagogues in Porto, in Lisbon. It's not a big community, but they have an active Jewish community in the most important cities.
Can you share with our travelers what you have learned about the opening of Portugal to tourists? Are they talking about vaccinated travelers only, negative COVID tests? What about children? Do you know anything more than we know from the news?
Well, the vaccination process is going well, but not as fast as in the States. For instance, both in Spain and Portugal, we are now getting vaccinated people. We are starting with under 40. Okay, because we started with the others one and so on. So, but probably till about July and August, we should have, most of the population, about 60–70% of the population already done. And we are thinking about, starting with kids also for the next term. I think nowadays, as the European Union have opened the borders, Portugal too, you don't have any restriction to travel to Portugal unless you have any when you are coming back. For instance, people from the UK, they could come to Spain and to Portugal, but they come to Spain when they are coming back to the UK, they need a COVID test. Not with Portugal, because the rates of Portugal with the COVID is getting lower and lower. So it's considered a safe country again, like a green country, according to the colors of the code.
When you think about Portugal and its Islamic history, what traces of the history still remain? And is that something they're proud of now?
Well, not that many. Some in the south, in the Algarve and the area, because it was the last to be reconquest. Because when they started with the reconquest in the 12th century, when the country was created, they did it very, very quickly. In 1 century and a half, they were done. So the Muslims they wouldn't stay that long in Portugal, for instance, than in Spain. So they have some traces and some heritage, but no, not that much.
Let's talk about those most famous blue and white tiles, right? So one, is there a name for those tiles? Do they paint them once they're on the wall? Do they make them and then put them up? Can you explain a little bit more about the tiles?
Yeah, well, the tile processes along the history have changed. They still have modern tiles now. So many artists, modern artists, they still do tiles. But what they normally do in the traditional ones is to make a drawing, and they draw the over the tiles, and I don't have exactly the technical process, but they need to cook it 2 times, okay, with different layers, okay, to get, you know, the shiny color and everything. So they need to do like a painting, and then put that painting on the scale over the tiles and cut it, okay, and then cook it. So it's really complicated, because if you do something wrong, you need to repeat the whole process, okay. So in the most important time for those white and blue tiles was pretty much from the 16th to the 18th century. So most of the buildings I saw you in Porto, are from that period, 16th, 17th, 18th century.
And why blue and white? Do you know? I mean, is there a significance to that?
No, it was a tradition that was kind of imported from the Netherlands. In the Netherlands also they were doing that, and they imported that tradition from there. Also, it has a kind of Islamic background, the whole thing with the tiles, like in the south of Spain. But this blue and white is something that they imported from the Netherlands artisans.
Somebody's asking about the cultural dance of Portugal. Is it like the Spanish have, or is it completely different?
I mean, you mean the music or the
music and dance?
Well, they have, you know, traditional dance, but it's not like the flamenco. They don't have flamenco, nothing like that. So they have folklore. So in between this folklore, they have different kind of dance along the country, but not like the flamenco. The tradition in Portugal with the music is the fado. With this, fado comes from fate, okay? You know, the destiny, okay? It's a kind of sad songs, because what most of the people singing that were people traveling abroad, you know, missing the country. So that's why the most of the songs are sad, not all of them. And that is the most important cultural tradition according to the music. And now in the last decades, we have, you know, modern singers adapting the fado songs to the modern rhythms, okay? So it's kind of popular again.
What is the cost of living like now in Portugal? I know years ago it was an extremely good buy and a good place to go for the dollar, but can you talk to us about the average cost of a meal or a coffee or a drink or something of that nature?
If you compare with other countries in Europe, like in Spain or Italy or France, is cheaper. It's not that much cheaper like 10 or 20 years
right.
ago, but could be, yes, probably 20% cheaper than in Spain in some occasions for food, for meal, except when you are in the city center. When you are in the city center of Lisbon or Porto, you can notice because, you know, they have a lot of visitors and well, they take advantage of that. But in general, you could find, you know, places, you know, significantly cheaper than in other capital cities. Yes.
How about outdoor activities like hiking and things like that? Is Portugal a big outside?
Yeah, they have another a national park, national reserves, a lot of, you know, sport activities along the rivers, hiking, trekking, along the coastline with surfers, kite surfing. Yeah, they have a lot of activities related with sports and
okay.
nature.
I'm going to allow you to breeze through the Q&A yourself and see if there's any other questions you want to address. I tried to take the clumps of questions that were all very much alike so that you kind of dealt with them together. But there are, you know, some real individual questions, if there's anything that jumps out at you.
Okay, well, I have first one from Judy Preto is asking me if her husband, last name Preto, has to do something with Portugal. Well, Preto, with only one T in Portuguese, means black. So sometimes they use it for the black people too. Okay, but in general, it means black, something black. Okay, so yes, could be related with Portugal. Dana Damore says, is the rooster also considered a good luck charm? Well, no, yes, somehow, because at the end he saved his life, but not really. It's like a souvenir sport. Are Portuguese fond of horses? Any horse breeds originate in Portugal? They have a particular type of horse in the north and also in a national park in the south. I'm not sure they are very fond of horses in general. And bullfighting, they use the horses for bullfighting because the bullfighting in Portugal is different than in Spain because they don't kill the bull. So they have the show, but without killing the bull on the stage. Okay, so they use the horses to do the, you know, the bullfighting. Okay. Oh, they are asking me, Sabrina is asking me about ginginia. Okay. I don't know exactly where you could find it in Canada, probably one of these particular specialized liquor stores. The ginginia is a cherry liquor. I think I forgot to tell you. A cherry liquor originally from Óbidos, which is a town near Lisbon, but you could find it also all over Portugal. It's a very sweet cherry liquor that normally you should have with chocolate. Okay.
Is it alcoholic?
Yeah, it has alcohol. Yeah, so you need to be careful with that. Just a sip with chocolate. In Óbidos in particular, they have kind of little chocolate cups.
Truffles or something like a truffle?
No, it's a chocolate cup. It's like a little cup made with chocolate. So you put the liquor inside and then you drink it and then you eat the cup.
A chocolate shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me see. How do people in Portugal today feel about Salazar? Giovanni asked. Well, Salazar was a dictator. He wasn't a military dictator. Okay, he was a professor of economics. So in a way, it's not the same like Franco, for instance, in Spain. And they haven't had a civil war. Okay, so some people are nostalgic of Salazar somehow, but not that many. Okay, it's part of the past of Portugal. Okay.
Okay, how about food, Manuel? You dealt with the pastries, which I guess you have a sweet tooth. Let's talk about some of the most famous foods in Portugal, and also how about vegetarian, vegan alternatives? Talk about that a little bit.
I think I missed to. Well, I think I mentioned the codfish, right? Yeah, the codfish is like the national dish, and you could have it in very many different preparations. But also they love soups. So when you have a daily menu in a restaurant, normally comes first with a soup or a salad. And the soup normally is made with potato and vegetables, all mixed, like a puree, okay? Something like that, or a salad. And then the main could be, you know, anything. Either the soup or the salad and the main, and something that they love to have. And the small coffee. And they have also very good cheeses from some of the mountains, like the one of Estrella. And they have a kind of appetizers similar to the Spanish tapas. They call it petiscos, okay, but it's kind of similar little appetizers. They have ham. It's not like the Iberian ham, but similar. It's kind of good. And they have some rice preparations, very popular, in particular the one prepared with duck and rice. It's a traditional dish from the north, and all kind of stews also with a lot of vegetables. They have also this kind of Mediterranean diet, like in Spain, we using fresh products, like all kind of vegetables, olive oil, fruit, and fish, apart of meat. They also love pork. They have a lot of variation with pork. Yeah.
Before we get to the next question, I just want to mention a few of the attendees asked about, can they see this afterwards? Yes. Every virtual tour presentation that we do is recorded, and a few hours after we finish, it will be live on the website, www.girltraveltours.com. We also have a YouTube channel, Girl Travel Tours, and Facebook, Girl Travel Tours. So on those 3 areas, you can see every single virtual tour presentation that's been done since last year. So if you've missed a little bit of this one, go back and catch what you've missed. And if you've missed another one, you can go back and catch that too. I hope that helps.
Okay, well, some people are asking me about the Algarve. I'm so sorry, but it was impossible to put all together in 1 hour. In fact, I know I did more than an hour. Yes, the Algarve is a beautiful area in the south with cities like Lagos, Portimao, Fado, the Cape of San Vincent, which is to the extreme of the coast. So yes, Algarve is a beautiful area to visit, but I couldn't include it in the presentation. I mentioned it all. Okay, best time to visit also done. Okay.
Is scuba diving a very popular sport?
Yeah. In fact, in the Algarve they could do scuba diving because the water are more quiet than in the north. In the north, it's a little more complicated because the water and the sea is more rough. But in Algarve, yes, and also in the area of Alentejo.
How about the temperature of the water, the sea?
In Celsius should be, I would say, in the north, quite cold, like maybe 10 Celsius. I don't know how much is that in Fahrenheit. Maybe 40 or so. Going to the south, it gets a little bit warmer, like probably 30s or maybe 50s, 60s, going that. Yeah, in the Algarve is much more warm.
A lot of hills, right? So very comfortable shoes when you go to Portugal?
Yeah, in particular in Porto and in Lisbon. In the other cities, not that much, but in Porto and Lisbon, yes. The 2 cities are built on the top of different hills. So it's kind of little San Francisco's.
They have matching bridges. They may as well have matching hills, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
I think we've done well with the questions. Do you see anything else? I want to end at the top of the hour so you can pick maybe 2 more questions.
Yeah, they are talking about plans to visit, graffiti we already mentioned. Yeah, Mary is asking about if she could book tours for Sintra in July. Yes, there are many companies to book, and you could do on your own. There are trains going to Sintra. It's really easy from the city center of Lisbon. You could take a train to Sintra, and in there you could have a bus ride or go on your own. The only thing with that is you should go online and book the tickets, the entrances to the palaces.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a major problem. Okay, but getting there is not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Seafood, awesome in Portugal, I would imagine, right? Because we're really right by the sea.
Yeah. Not only cod fish, any kind of food, seafood is really, really good.
Okay, I think that about wraps it up, Manuel. How do you feel? We're all good?
Yes, as you wish. Yes.
Okay, awesome. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. As always, Manuel brings us a great organized presentation that has a great mix of education, culture, fun, and history. So thank you very much, Manuel. And thank you everybody for joining us. We will see you next week. Take care and have a good night.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.